CN News.
I brought this, Care Bear, and we've been talking about what's been happening in Venezuela quite a bit recently. It's been popping off down there, especially when we're committing war crimes in, international waters and not so international waters, which you'll find out in a second. But we'll start here. So, Camilla Escalante, go follow her if you haven't already. She reports the United States murdered 2 men from Trinidad and Tobago in yesterday's U.S. strike on a boat in the Caribbean Sea during the fake anti-drug military operations against Venezuela. So I'll roll the footage.
2 men believed to be Trinbagonians were killed in the latest U.S. drone strike of Venezuelan waters. And now Alas Cuevas' family is demanding answers.
They say Chad Joseph wasn't a trafficker, just a young man trying to come home. Jensen Levend went to the fishing village to speak with the family.
Like most of the men gathered here at the Las Cuevas fishing depot, Chad Joseph was a fisherman. Both his relatives and residents are denying strenuously that he was involved in drug trafficking. They say his killing was unjust.
When Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar said the United States should kill alleged drug dealers violently, no citizen was listed among the dead. On the U.S.'s 5th airstrike, Trinidadians Chad Joseph and another man identified only as Samaru were among 6 people killed on Tuesday, taking the number of alleged narco-traffickers killed by the U.S. since September 2nd to 27. Joseph's grandfather, Cornell Clement, who denied his grandson was a drug trafficker, says he has no choice but to trust in God. Now he questions the U.S.'s method of dealing with the situation.
I watch at it as wickedness. Because why we killing people children for? They're not in that yet, they're supposed to be that way.
You say he was a drug trafficker, that's what he was.
No, the boy ain't no drug trafficker. He just make the run and come back.
Joseph's grandmother, Christine, says her grandson was in Venezuela for the past 3 months and wanted desperately to return home, but his previous attempts failed.
Before time he was coming, they shoot up the boat. He ended up surviving on some little beach, and some people take time because I talked to him and I talked to one of the ladies too. And the second time I heard he come in, I get his mother 2 days ago I asked her. She told me he must come in and something with the boat again, so he go back.
A short distance away, residents of Las Cuevas village stopped one man expressed
what the U.S. doing there? I think it's inhumane, right? If all they really want, right, all they blow the boat up. What evidence it have showing really is drugs, and stuff like that. Like we say, is guns, or even say is human trafficking, anything. We can. What is the closure the family having now?
Calls and messages to the Prime Minister and Defense Minister Wayne Sturge went unanswered. Months ago, Sturge said during a post-cabinet media briefing that any Trini fisherman caught doing illegal activity was on their own. Foreign Affairs Minister Sean Sobers was unavailable for comment. Jensen Lavend, CNC3 News.
What is the fucking Caribbean leadership doing? Is what I want to know. But,
I mean, politicians like politicking.
Yeah.
Same shit.
Fucking same shit.
We think that, what we go through in this country is limited to here. No, it's everywhere.
Fucking dumb. So I have this from Arturo Dominguez. As the attacks on small vessels in the Caribbean off the coast of Latin America continue under the guise of targeting drug smugglers, the U.S. has yet to provide any evidence that it's targeting anyone other than civilians. The false accusations about drug smuggling against President Nicolas Maduro and now Colombian President Gustavo Petro, alongside the militarized and hateful rhetoric towards Latinos, make it clear that this isn't about democracy. New reporting from Colombia shows that on September 15th, the U.S. Navy fired on an incapacitated fishing vessel in Colombia's territorial waters. The vessel was adrift and had its distress signal up, due to engine failure. According to the report, the people on board were not drug smugglers, but fishermen in distress. In yet another case, out of an abundance of cases since Trump took office, that highlights the importance of due process required by U.S. and international law, which there is none. There's no fucking due process. Like, at this point. So, this is from Going Underground, who writes, Colombia knows that we are Siamese brothers, and whatever happens with Colombia happens with Venezuela, and whatever happens with Venezuela happens with Colombia. This is, again, Nicolas Maduro. Washington is embarking on another attempt at enforcing the Monroe Doctrine and wants to achieve the results of another Operation Condor. All of Latin America is under threat, not just Venezuela. Collin, have you heard of the Monroe Doctrine? You heard of this?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yes.
I did not necessarily know all about it, so I went Googlings, right? And this is what supposedly it is. The Monroe Doctrine is United States foreign policy position that opposes European colonialism in the Western Hemisphere. It holds that any intervention in the political affairs of the Americas by foreign powers is potentially hostile act against the U.S. The doctrine was central to American grand strategy in the 20th century. James Monroe first articulated the doctrine on December 2nd during his 7th annual State of the Union address to Congress, though it would not be named after him until 1850. At the time, nearly all Spanish colonies in the America had either achieved or were close to independence. Monroe inserted that the New World and the Old World were to remain distinctly separate spheres of influence, and thus further efforts by European powers to control or influence sovereign states in the region would be viewed as a threat to U.S. security. In turn, the U.S. would recognize and not interfere with existing European colonies nor meddle in the internal affairs of European countries. Of course they wouldn't. You would never do that. During the Cold War, though, the Monroe Doctrine was applied to Latin America by the framers of U.S. foreign policy. When the Cuban Revolution established a communist government with ties to the Soviet Union, it was argued that Monroe Doctrine should be invoked to prevent the spread of Soviet-backed communism in Latin America. Under this rationale, the U.S. provided intelligence and military aid to Latin and South American governments that claimed or appeared to be threatened by communist subversion, as is in the case of Operation Condor. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, Kennedy cited the Monroe Doctrine as grounds of the United States confrontation with the Soviet Union on the installation of Soviet ballistic missiles on Cuban soil. The debate over this new interpretation of the Monroe Doctrine burgeoned in reaction to the Iran-Contra affair. It was revealed that the U.S. CIA had been covertly training Contra guerrilla soldiers in Honduras in an attempt to destabilize and overthrow the Sandinistas' revolutionary government of Nicaragua and its president Daniel Ortega. CIA Director Robert Gates vigorously defended the Contra operation in 1984, arguing that eschewing U.S. intervention in Nicaragua would be totally to abandon the Monroe Doctrine. So, Trump implied potential use of the doctrine in August 2017 when he mentioned the possibility of military intervention in Venezuela. CIA Director Pompeo declared that the nation's deterioration was the result of interference from Iranian and Russian-backed groups. In February 2018, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson praised the Monroe Doctrine as clearly a success, warning of imperial Chinese trade ambitions and touting the United States as the region's preferred trade partner. Pompeo replaced Tillerson as Secretary of State in May 2018. Trump reiterated his commitment to the implementation of the Monroe Doctrine at the 73rd UN General Assembly. In 2018, Russian Permanent Representative of the United Nations Vasily Nebenzia criticized the U.S. for what Russia perceived as the implementation of the Monroe Doctrine at the 8,452nd emergency meeting of the UN Security Council on January 26, 2019. Venezuela representative listed 27 interventions in Latin America that Venezuela considers to be implementations of the Monroe Doctrine that stated that, in the context of the statements, they considered it a direct military threat to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Cuba's representative formulated a similar opinion. The current administration in the United States of America has declared the Monroe Doctrine to be in effect. On March 3, 2019, National Security Advisor and War Walrus John Bolton invoked the Monroe Doctrine in describing the Trump administration policies in America, saying, "In this administration, We're not afraid to use the word Monroe Doctrine. It's been the objective of American presidents going back to Ronald Reagan to have a completely democratic hemisphere. President Trump, determined to treat the Western Hemisphere as a U.S. sphere of influence, has been characterized as a revival of said doctrine. Questions? Concerns? Thoughts? We good? Cool.
We're good.
Historians have observed that while the doctrine contained a commitment to resist further European colonialism in the Americas, it resulted in some aggressive implications for foreign policy from the U.S., since there was no limitations on its own actions mentioned within it. Historian Jay Sexton notes that the tactics used to implement the doctrine were modeled after those employed by European imperial powers during the 17th and 18th centuries. American history, William Appleman Williams, seeing the doctrine as a form of American imperialism, described it as a form of imperial anti-colonialism. Chomsky argues that in practice, the Monroe Doctrine has been used by the U.S. government as a declaration of hegemony and a right of unilateral intervention over the Americas, which is pretty much what it looks like it's been, no? So, just to continue our story from earlier, at the UN Venezuela, alerts of a killer roaming around the Caribbean committing massacres. Moncada displays today at Guardian newspaper, which reported that 2 Trinbagonians were murdered in the latest U.S. strike on a boat in the Caribbean, right? And Camilla writes, fishermen and seamen in Trinidad and Tobago are being urged to stay close to shore amid fears of being bombed by the United States military. So, and this is fishermen. Keep in mind what they do to Palestinian fishermen as well, essentially keeping them on the shore and making sure that they don't feed people with their skill. So that's part of it. But I found this on my Twitter when looking through stuff, Collin, and it piqued my interest because I hadn't heard about it, right? So Nicolas Maduro, handpicked successor to this man, Hugo Chavez, right, apparently donated like crazy amounts of oil to America to help like people heat their homes. Have you heard about this?
No.
So close to 200,000 poor families in 15 cold weather states in every northeastern state except New Hampshire can thank controversial Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez for helping them heat their homes this winter. So I found this article from People's World, right? Yes.
This year.
Yeah. No, 2013 is when this was written.
Okay.
So poor people in the U.S. also benefited from Venezuelan oil, which I think this actually happened before this article was written. So Boston, former U.S. Representative Joseph Kennedy II offered his prayers Tuesday to the family of late Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, saying he cared deeply about the poor and helped nearly 2 million Americans through the former lawmaker's heating assistance charity. Okay, I think this was on the death of Chavez. This came out, right? So
yeah.
Kennedy, who heads Citizens Energy, said Chavez cared about the poor at a time when some of the wealthiest people on our planet have more money than they can ever reasonably expect to spend. So if you were in this area, you might have seen commercials such as this.
Mommy, I'm cold.
So in conjunction with Citgo.
I'm Joe Kennedy. If you need help staying warm, call me at Citizens Energy at 1-877-JOE-for-OIL. We'll get you some heating oil at 40% off from the good people of Venezuela and Citgo. No one should be left out in the cold.
From the good people of Venezuela and Citgo.
Oh, God.
Yep. So, and remember last week how we were some of the only people to talk about how Maduro during talks was willing to like allow U.S. like private companies to do stuff with oil and resources there, right? Just to try to get Trump off his back, pretty much, which I've not seen anyone else talk about, but it sounds very similar to this kind of stuff, right? Where A spokesman for Kennedy said Chavez and the people of Venezuela have donated about 200 million gallons of heating oil over an 8-year collaboration with Citizens Energy. Donated. They just gave it. They're like, here. The charity distributes heating oil to lower income families in 25 states and Washington, D.C., offering 100 gallons per family. Kennedy, a son of the late Robert Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy, founded Citizens Energy in 1979 with the goal of reducing home heating oil costs for the poor and elderly after the energy crisis of the 1970s. So, the former Massachusetts Democratic congressman drew fire from U.S. critics of Chavez when he began the fuel assistance collaboration with Venezuela's state oil subsidiary in 2005. The critics said Chavez was using the heating oil program as propaganda against the Republican administration of President Bush. Kennedy's son, newly elected U.S. Representative Joseph Kennedy III, also released a statement saying, "My thoughts and prayers are with President Chavez's family." The younger Kennedy said in a statement, "In this time of transition, it is my hope the United States and Venezuela can build a productive relationship for the future." So, again, these were the kind of, like, commercials you'd see.
I wear 2 pairs of long underwear and a jacket, and that's inside my house.
84 and alone. I had to drag an iron cart from the basement to the kitchen so I could sleep by the oven.
I'm Joe Kennedy. Help is on the way. Heating oil at 40% off from our friends in Venezuela and Citgo. Call me at Citizens Energy at 1-877-JOE for oil. No one should be.
So this is what was playing at the time. I don't know if people remember this. But on December 6, 2005, Representative Jose Serrano, along with Citgo CEO Felix Rodriguez, leaders of neighborhood organizations, and Venezuela's ambassador to the United States, Bernardo Alvarez, delivered the first installment of 8 million gallons of Citgo heating oil, earmarked from New York City to be sold to those in need at a substantial reduced rate. Rep. Serrano issued this message. Hugo Chavez was a leader that understood the needs of the poor. He was committed to empowering the powerless, rip Mr. President. Serrano represents one of the most democratic and heavily Hispanic districts in the country in New York City at the time. On January 27, 2006, Rep. Chaka Fatah announced that Citgo, a U.S. subsidiary of the publicly owned Venezuelan National Oil Company, was going to begin shipping 5 billion gallons of discounted heating oil to Philadelphia as part of a plan to provide assistance to 25,000 low-income families throughout the city. So, have you heard about that at all? That Chavez essentially gave us a ton of oil? Here, take some oil, leave us alone. You know, that's pretty much what happened. Like, here, take it at a discount. So, you know, this would have been in your neck of the woods, I do believe. Sounded like all northeastern, like, areas, at least with the Kennedys involved, you know?
But that was probably before my time, before I moved up there. That
Sure.
was very 80s.
But
I came up in the early aughts.
I brought this just because we've been looking at, like, you know, a lot of these historical figures and what they've said and what they've done in the past, right? As it influences what happens now, right? And just these little bits that get forgotten in history, you know, when they talk about, oh, he was a dictator, he ruined Venezuela and whatever, then why the fuck were we taking their oil at a discount? Like, you know what I mean? We were super happy to have that. Right. You know, so, but it might be because he said shit like this back then. So this was 16 years ago, Care Bear, when that man, Hugo Chavez, exiled the Israeli ambassador 16 years ago. Right? So guess why he said that shit? Here you go. The plan they have is to thrash Gaza. First sentence. Even 2 years ago, we saw some images. The government of Israel said they would take out Jewish settlers in Gaza to facilitate the Palestinian government. Liars. They lied. It was to take out their own people and attain freedom for themselves. While Jews were inside Gaza, they couldn't destroy, as they are doing here, bombarding innocent people indiscriminately. It would have been difficult for them to kill their own people. Turns out, Hugo, it's not so difficult for them to kill their own people. Go look at what happened on October 7th. But, you know, now they had their hands free, and unfortunately, it's a horrible thing. This stage is the final one, the last attack to finish Gaza 16 years ago, and destroy more than 1.5 million Palestinians who have been blocked by the Israelis. A blockade on the Red Cross where medicine, food, nothing is allowed to pass into Gaza. And the world does nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not Venezuela. Venezuelans rise as a nation who want peace for the Palestinian people. Respect for Palestinians. We will see. This is where it gets funny. We will see if the new government of the United States will come with a new vision of the world. Guess which new government that was, Care Bear?
So 16 years ago, sales Obama.
January 20th, Obama's inauguration.
Come on, people!
We'll see if it's true that President Obama is going to finish the war in Iraq. And if he'll start taking away the unconditional support that the imperialist government, which has allowed Israel to attack, kill, murder, and ignore UN resolutions, etc. It is imperialist madness. Israel finally has become the killing arm of American imperialism. Here in Latin America, they tried to create an Israeli state. It will never happen here, an imperialist killing arm to assault the Latin American people. Every day, Latin America will be more united and more free. I hope someday Arabs will be the same way, united. United or dominated, you decide. So, of course they want regime change from his hand-chosen successor. Of course that's what they want.
Sure.
So, closing thoughts? Like...
history repeating itself.
Fucking sad, dude.
But...
craziness.
Not much has changed.
Well... saying that not much has changed.
Nothing has changed.
Saying that nothing has changed is why YouTube's demonetized us. You can scan that QR code on your screen. Go to code-v.com/Indie News Network, or links are in the description below if you want to donate. But if you're one of the poors like ourselves, just like and subscribe, share this video with others, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching.